More motivation to love your neighbor. Our purpose statement: loving some neighbors can be quite challenging. Realizing our brokenness and that of our neighbor, grasping our eternal destiny, all with the companionship of a God who loved you first, provides a sweet motivation to keep on learning to love. Realizing the brokenness of our neighbor and of your brokenness, grasping our eternal destiny, all with the companionship of a God who loved you, provides a sweet motivation to keep on learning to love. What do you do in situations where it seems impossible to love someone? We had a neighbor in our building where I live who had some problems, and we could never tell whether she was going to be friendly or antagonistic. We can choose. You know, Katie, you never know what she's going to be like. You don't know. How do we feel about that? I mean, you know people, maybe you're one of them, maybe I'm one of them, who it's really difficult to love. And we chastise them for their brokenness. You shouldn't be that way. I respected my father as a child. Yet when I was a teenager in college, my father became unfaithful to my mother, his wife, and he started smoking and drinking in excess. I didn't know my father this way. I don't know what happened. Maybe he got stuck in his midlife crisis. Maybe that which was within him finally found an exit. He couldn't take it anymore, but it was a surprise, disappointing. My aunt called me. I was at college at Penn State. I lived about 60 miles from school. My aunt called me, my mother's sister, and said that things weren't good at home. So of course she calls the oldest, which I am, and I go home. I'd been a believer for about a year. Found Christ, that's a long story, but I found Christ, and I was growing. There was some good things happening, and so I came home, and I walked in the door, and my father did not expect me to come home. And I was shaking in my shoes. And I said, "Dad, I know what you've been doing, and I came home to tell you that I love you." Now, love wasn't expressed in my home. My parents did not say that openly. I knew it because of the way they treated us, because of what they said to other people, but they never really said it to us, to me. And so to say this in my family, "I love you," that was outside the boundaries of what we do in this family. My dad was in his 70s before I was near 50 years old before I heard my father say, "I love you." What a lovely sound to hear from your father, those words, "I love you." I've tried to make sure these words are used frequently in my home as a father. My children hear those words. But some people are very hard to love. Sometimes it seems impossible to love difficult, toxic, angry people. I want to be careful because we talk about those people out there where maybe they're sitting in front of you or in back of you, or maybe they're sitting in your skin. So let's not think about those people. Let it come home. We can be difficult to love. Yet we expect people with brokenness to respond. It's somewhat like asking a person with a broken leg to run a marathon, or a person with a broken arm to lift barbells. It isn't going to happen. They can't do it. My father could not tell me he loved me because he was broken. He didn't know how. It wasn't part of who he was. Later in his life, he found it. So we can be hard to love, and there is brokenness that needs healing before the unlovely can become lovely. In these verses in Romans, Paul shares further about loving your neighbor. In the previous verses, he teaches, love your neighbor as yourself, and this is the fulfillment of the law, that law related to relationships. But here's more motivation to love your unlovable neighbor. I'm going to read Romans 13. I'm going to start with verse 8, where we were last week, and then continue on to verse 14, and we'll focus on verses 11 to 14. Here we go. Let no doubt remain outstanding except the continuing debt of love. I said doubt. Let no debt remain outstanding. Don't doubt it. Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, murder, steal, you shall not covet, whatever other commandments there may be, are all summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. And do this, understanding the present time. The hour has come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over, the day is almost here. So let us put aside deeds of darkness, put on the armor of light. Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality or debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. Rather, clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. Motivation to love your neighbor. Number one, because of hope in your eternal destiny. You can be motivated to love your neighbor because of hope in your eternal destiny. Pardon me. Verse 11, and do this, understand the present time. What is this that he's talking about? Do this. Well, it refers to what comes before it, obviously, and what comes before that is to love your neighbor as yourself. Do this. But it probably includes what he's been talking about for the last 2 chapters. For 2 chapters, Paul's been telling us that you owe no one anything but a debt of love. Romans 12:9, he says, let love be sincere, genuine, without hypocrisy. 12:10, love one another with brotherly affection.